What's up, players? Welcome to my round 17 tips. But before we get to that, let's go through our round 16 tips. Now, I only got one wrong, and it was the 50-50 where I was like, you know what? I'm going to tip Sydney against the Dogs, and it didn't happen. I'm not disappointed about the tip. They only lost by 9. They very well would have won if they were, I don't know, a bit more accurate, but you know. But yeah, I got Port Adelaide right. I think everyone tipped Port Adelaide. It was a relatively easy round to get 7 out of 7 on, and I didn't get 7 out of 7. But I didn't tip Port by enough. I didn't expect them to win by that much. I thought Carlton, especially after their players came out defending Michael Voss, would have shown up a little bit more. Gold Coast got scary towards the end, but they were comfortable for most of the game. Some people actually tipped North Melbourne. Unbelievable. We smacked the living daylights out of them by 85. This game was a bit too close for my liking, but Collingwood ended up running away in the last quarter as expected. Adelaide battered Richmond as expected, and Fremantle, their dodgy team might be St Kilda because, well, they nearly lost to them again, but professionally won it in the end. It went down by 14 points. It was like 60 to 46 at one point. I was like, oh my god. And then Fremantle kind of kicked away. 6 out of 7, you definitely take that. But nevertheless, we're on to round 17 now. Finally, the buys are all over with. Okay, Thursday night, and they make up for it on Friday with playing 2 games, which really aren't the 2 best games. But anyway, North Melbourne and the Dogs, I mean, not much to say. North Melbourne, again, I still think are very overrated. Yes, they've been more competitive, but they're not winning games. They're still the same terrible team. I mean, they got battered by Sydney, battered by Gold Coast, and then battered by Hawthorn last week. I mean, these losses need to be done by this stage. You're in your rebuild year for the 6th consecutive year where you're going to finish, yet again, at least bottom 3. If not, definitely bottom 4. I mean, a win here would actually put them up to 14th, but do I think that's going to happen? No. And also, this is the first round where the top 9 are playing the bottom 9 teams. The first round, or 1 out of 5 rounds in the history since we've had 18 teams, which is, kind of cool. But, I'm expecting the Dogs to walk over them here. The Dogs do this every single week where they play a bad team. I mean, they just did it. Where are the Doggies? They just did it. That is Fremantle. They did it to Richmond last week. They beat them by, a 79. They did it to St Kilda the week before. They did it to St Kilda earlier in the season. They're just used to battering really bottom talent teams. They will batter these bottom teams. As simple as that, but they struggle to compete against the top side. So as inconsistent as the Dogs are, they will flatter, those bottom 6 sides, like an Essendon, like a Melbourne, like a St Kilda, North, Richmond, West Coast. Doesn't matter. If they're playing either one of them, they're going to battle them by nearly 80 points. So I've got the Dogs winning this one comfortably. I have gone 53 because North are a weird one. I feel like they won't have 2 really, really bad games, like to a point where it's like 80 points. But I do expect the Dogs to win this one comfortably, so give me the Doggies. Friday night footy, it is the biggest rivalry in the AFL. You got the 2 biggest clubs playing each other, Carlton, Collingwood. As you can see, the tipping percentage is fairly favouring Collingwood. I just can't see. I know Carlton will have a random ass upset, and I hope it's not against us, but I can't see it being here. For them to make finals, they have to win the remainder 8 of their game. And that's how high up the competition is now. And how clear the top 9 are from the competition. Because considering 7th, 8th, and 9th play North Melbourne, Essendon, and West Coast, I'm going to respectfully say they're all going to win. If Port Adelaide, and I'll get into my tip later, don't beat Brisbane, and even if Carlton or Sydney win, there is a 3-game gap between 10th and 9th. That is absolutely massive. To make finals, if you're a team that own 24 points, so Essendon are still alive, Sydney are still alive, Carlton, Port Adelaide, all still alive, they need to win every single game. Port can maybe afford to lose one, but they don't want to be put in that position to where they need to win, the rest of their games if they drop a game, which very well might be this week. But yeah, Collingwood currently of their rivals sit 7 wins clear of them. That is absolutely insane. 7 wins clear, and we're 15 games in the season. And Carlton, some said top 4 contender. Most said making finals. I said making finals. I thought they'd finish 8th. So 11th actually is very genuine to them, considering how bad they've been. And that's simply just because they've had an easy fixture. I mean, they've won 2 games in their last, 5? And that probably extends further. I didn't really give it a good look. And that was West Coast and Essendon, a VFL Essendon side, which they only won by 8 points. And then the West Coast game by 34. So there's still concerning signs. I'm expecting Collingwood to win. They've won their last however many games. Their last loss was, the 3 points or whatever it was to Geelong. And then, before that, it wasn't until opening round where they were just outshadowed by the Giants. So, yeah, give me Collingwood here by, 35 points. They don't put teams to bed. We know this. They don't like bullying teams. They just enjoy winning. And despite them not like bullying teams, they still have the second highest percentage, but that's simply because they don't really lose. The second Friday night game, not sure why they're doing this. Maybe to test something. I couldn't tell you because no one's watching this game, let's be real. I don't see why putting on a Friday. Well, the biggest game of the year is on in terms of viewership. It's still going to pull massive numbers despite the result basically being confirmed in Collingwood's favour, because you never know with a rivalry. Anyway, West Coast at Optus taking on GWS. Do we have to speak further? I mean, West Coast have won 1 game. It was against St Kilda, and it was, just a tragic week in that club with all the Selwood stuff, so they really wanted to show out, and they did, to be fair. But again, if your only wins against St Kilda, and you're 1-14, that's an awful record. You'll be 1-15 after this. GWS aren't going to drop this game, especially as they sit currently out of the 8. And they're really going to try and push the top 10. And what's crazy is GWS are a game or 1 win off second. They sit 9th, and they win this game. They'll be tied on wins with Brisbane, who also have 10 wins. So that's just ridiculous. And there's obviously 5 teams that have 10 wins and another 4 that have 9 wins. So that's how, up there the top of the comp is. But yeah, GWS will win this by at least 10 goals, I reckon. They're just going to kick ass. Essendon, Gold Coast. Essendon still have majority of a VFL team. Gold Coast are 8th place. They've been sitting tightly in the top 4 all season. They're starting to fall. They do not want to let they lose this. They'll be out of the 8. As simple as that. You can't drop a game like this. They need to prove that they can win games away from home. You've been given an easy fixture. You've got one of the best coaches in history. And, you've gotten everything that you basically wanted in the trade period. You've got to make finals. And this is a game where you just simply have to win. Majority are tipping them for a reason. Essendon have been shocking. I mean, they're going to start dropping into the bottom 4. They have the 3rd worst percentage in the league, the Bombers. Even North Melbourne, who have only won 4 games, have a better percentage than them. They're only better percentage than West Coast and Richmond, which isn't really anything to be proud of. So, yeah, I'm going to go Gold Coast. I think they'll win it by 20 points. It'll be closer than what probably most expect. Although I haven't really asked people their opinions on margins, but I'm assuming they probably think this will be a flogging. I guarantee you it won't be, despite how poor Essendon have been. They've lost their last 4. Brisbane at the Gabba, Carlton, they were both close games. Then they lost by nearly 100, and then 40 last week at Optus Stadium, where they actually performed decently for, at least the first little bit of the game, and then kind of just got put to bed. But yeah, give me Gold Coast by 20. Geelong, Richmond, this might be the first 100-point win of the season, if the Cats decide to go with that. I mean, GMHBA, you're versing Richmond, who have lost their last several games. I mean, I can't remember their last win. I think it was, Gold Coast maybe? I believe. I'm not too sure, but they've lost numerous in a row now. They're just looking like they're just going to get demolished every week. I mean, their last 5 losses, Essendon's a pretty bad loss. They were competitive against GWS, but then only scored 36 against Sydney, lost by 80 to the Dogs, and then lost by another nearly 70 last week to the Crows. So, there's not much to say on this. Geelong are going to kick ass at home. They'll win this by probably 10 goals, I would say. So, Yeah, give me Geelong by 10 goals. Give me Jeremy Cameron for a bag. It's a relatively easy round to tip, let's be real. There might be a few swing games, and we'll get to one in a moment. But the other one could very well be Essendon Gold Coast. Other than that, I think, yeah, every game is pretty easy to tip, just given how divided the competition is. Brisbane, Port Adelaide at the Gabba. This is the other game that I was talking about, because Brisbane, although they sit second, they have been dodgy. They've won 3 of their last 5, but put a dodgy performance at the Gabba against the Dons. Obviously lost back-to-back weeks to Adelaide and then GWS, also at the Gabba, and then smacked Geelong for absolutely no reason in Geelong. And they also smacked Hawthorn 5 weeks ago. So they're a weird team. They're very good at versing top contenders. Port Adelaide have not been a top contender, so this is where my concern comes in for the Lions, especially at the Gabba. They have been, pretty poor there, considering it's meant to be a strong home ground where you really hold that advantage. But, they barely beat West Coast there in their first home game. They won that by 20. They beat Geelong there earlier in the year by just 9 points. Battered by Collingwood. Struggled against Gold Coast despite being the dominant side, only winning by 3 goals. They lost to Melbourne by 2 goals. Put a dodgy performance out to Essendon. And then lost to GWS. Those are their games at the Gabba this season. So there's 3 losses in there. One of them was massive, and then you've had some easy teams there, and you've actually struggled. They haven't had a good performance, maybe other than beating Geelong by 9 points at the Gabba, but that was back in round 3. That's 14 weeks ago now. So that's a massive concern for the Lions heading into this game, and they're versing a decently surging Port Adelaide side who have won 3 of their last 4 with wins over GWS. They battered Carlton at Adelaide over last week. They displayed a good performance against Melbourne, and then they had that loss to Sydney in the middle. But I am going to back the Lions in this one. I think Port Adelaide's season will be put to bed. This will leave them 3 games out of the 8, at least I hope. But I wouldn't completely count out Port Adelaide, given how dodgy at home, especially Brisbane, have been this season, and that's going to be a very trigger warning factor for finals times when you're actually playing real top sides like Geelong, Collingwood and Adelaide at the Gabba. If you continue playing that dodgy there, you might go out in straight sets. As much as you can camp at the Gabba to get to the grand final, if you're not performing even at your own home stadium, then there's going to be concerns there. But give me Brisbane by 2 goals. I think they will get the job done. They are the better side overall, obviously. But yeah, it's going to be a tight one. Hawthorn, St Kilda. We found out just 2 hours ago that Josh Weddle will likely be out for the season. Now, some people won't be concerned. I'm kind of in the middle. It's like his dash, his agility, his aerial ability, and just his ability to read the game and the amount he's stepped up. He's probably our most improved player from last season. He's been fantastic, and his versatility is unmatched. He can play forward, he can play on the wing, he can play in the midfield, he can play in the back line, he can play as a rock. He can literally do everything, that kid. And I don't think Hawks fans really understand how important that loss is. But the positive is, with Mitch Lewis, Cal Shadir, Will Day, James Warple, James Sicily, Jack Scrimshaw, those 6 names all expected to return very, very soon. Obviously, Scrimshaw, Warple, and Sicily all look likely to be returning this week. Obviously, Warple's very good. Sicily, although he's been absolutely arse this season, is still the best key defender in the league when he does play like it. And I'm confident that he will find that form again, because he's a professional, all-Australian Blazer in 2023, carrying that back line. With ripper performances. He's been carrying an injury all year. He's finally back, and we saw some glimpses of him in training. If you do pay attention to training videos that are posted, he looked extremely good, tagging it up with Will Day indeed. So, it's looking scary, and I think Will Day just overall is going to change the entire team, not just in the midfield, but off half-back and even up forward when he's needed. He's kind of like that Josh Weddle, but 40 times better, obviously. Versing a St Kilda side that I'm not worried about. I know, Izzy has some weird love with this club, as I do with Melbourne. Melbourne sit right above them by 0.5 a percentage. But we need percentage boosters. We have the second worst percentage in the top 8. Actually, no, ours is better than Brisbane. That's actually quite surprising. It's nearly better than Gold Coast, but on the teams that have 40 points, it's the second worst. And with teams that could get to 40 points, so like your Gold Coast and like your Bulldogs, and even GWS could reach that this week. Gold Coast and the Dogs have better percentage. That could definitely push us down. So this is a must-win for us. But not just that, also a percentage booster. We saw what we could do last week. We had a poor 3 games at playing top sides. But now it's, there's no excuses. We're getting the players back. We've won our last 3. We're carrying the momentum. We lost to 3 contenders, beat 2 contenders, and then battered North Melbourne, giving them their worst loss of the season last week and an 85-point win. Finally seeing glimpses of that dangerous ball movement yet again. I know it's just North, but you've seen what North have done to some good teams. Drawing with Brisbane, only losing by 9 points to Adelaide. The Dogs only beat them by 17 or something like that earlier in the year. And then obviously they've got the 4 wins and a draw on the board, so it's much better than what they've shown in previous seasons. But despite that, I still think North Melbourne fans especially overhype North Melbourne a bit too much. They've got a good young core and they will be good soon, but they've just got to be more consistent with that. But their last 8 weeks of footy, North Melbourne, actually hasn't been horrible. They're continuing this win-loss kind of streak. Obviously, they beat West Coast and Richmond. Only lost at Optus Stadium by a goal as well to Fremantle, who were the in-form side with 4 wins in a row heading into that game. So, haven't been horrible. But anyway, St Kilda, on the other hand, they've lost 4 of their last 5. Their 2 wins, I believe, are they beat Melbourne, and then I can't remember who they beat. It was someone else towards the bottom. It might have been... Well, actually, I don't have a clue. But they've only won 2 of their last 11 games. So before those 2 wins, which came at random points in the last 11 games, their last win was round 4. I believe it was the upset to Port Adelaide. And that's during the period they started 3 wins and 2 losses. So, yeah, they've gone 2-9 since then. And it's not good enough. Or 2-8 since then. So they've won 2 of their last 10 or 11, and it's just, I'm not worried in the slightest. We need to use this as a percentage booster, try boost it to 122, maybe push 125, and get that really good form starting to go heading into finals. So I'm going to go the Hawks. I'm going to go us by 40 points. I think we can really damage them here, especially with some changes coming in. Ramsden will likely stay in the side rather than Deer coming in, but you'll have Warple for Butler, you'll have Sicily come in for Mitchell, and then you'll probably have Scrimshaw for Weddle. It's just how we're going to handle having 4 talls, because we've seen it going horribly wrong all season, because it slows that ball movement down off half-back, which is what we're so dangerously known for. But give me the Hawks by 40. Sydney, Fremantle, this is the other 50-50 game. Sydney are actually favourites to win this. I did tip them against a contending Dogs side last week. I'm not going to do it again. I trust Fremantle a lot more. They've won their last 6. The Dockers, a 50-point win over Port. And they've beaten good sides. Port is still a good side. Despite how they've been this season, they still are a dangerous side, especially when you play them at Adelaide Oval. Obviously, Fremantle played them at Optus, but a 50-point win against Port is still remarkable. Then they went away to Gold Coast, beat Gold Coast, barely beat North Melbourne, but North play weirdly well at Optus Stadium as to why they bought games out there, and it was a North Melbourne home game, which is quite odd. Then they beat Essendon comfortably by 40, and then they kind of struggled against St Kilda, but you're never going to see Fremantle win big, okay? They're more a defensively structured team. They don't really, play high attacking crazy footy as to why, and you can see how good their defense has been. They've conceded 51, 64, 67, 63 and 69, nothing pushing 70 over the last 5 weeks, which is really impressive. And Sydney, they've still lost 3 of their last 5 with 2 massive losses. Now yes, they've won 2 of the last 3, but against Richmond, that's nothing really credible. And then obviously Port Adelaide was a very good win, especially in Adelaide, so I'll give them that. But, even at the SCG, they've been a bit dodgy and they've just lost to the Dogs. So Give me Fremantle. Give me Fremantle by 2 goals. We all know what happened. Sydney's winning streak was ended at the SCG. I think they were 11-0 heading into the game, and Fremantle ended it. They've now won their last 6. I think they're going to make it 7 in a row as they really start pushing for top 4, and they'll beat the Swans. Adelaide versus Melbourne. Adelaide have been cruising. They've been beautiful. They've lost, 2 games in probably their last 10 or 11, which, they lost to the Hawks in Tassie, which is fair enough. It was just a scrappy game. It's going to happen here and there, but they sit third. They're still above Geelong. Their percentage is the best in the league, in fact, which is something that's terrifying. They score the second most. Other than the Dogs, they have put up the highest score this year, and they're versing a Melbourne side who are just so weird. They've now lost their last 4, Melbourne. They went 0-5. They proceeded to win 4 of their next 5, and now they've lost 4 of their last 5. So, that's their weird, 5 to 5 to 5 game period where they just lose, then they have really good periods, and now they've had a really bad one. And could they turn it around in this period? No, I doubt it. I highly doubt it. I think they're definitely bottom 4 bound. And again, as long as they stay above St Kilda, I don't care. And I tip them to finish 14th. My mid-season ladder predictions are actually looking quite sexy, if I do say so myself. But against Adelaide at Adelaide Oval with their form, they've still won 4 of their last 5. They lost to the Hawks, of course. I think they had the bye, then they just battered Richmond by 68 points. So, full credit to Adelaide. They'll win this. They'll win it by 50 points. They will definitely be scoring over 100. But, Melbourne do weirdly play good at Adelaide Oval. They bring it to Port Adelaide. But I think Adelaide are just going to be too much for them here. I've got them winning by, probably 50. It might only be 40. But they're winning nevertheless. So I've got all the top teams winning, and I've got the top 9 clearing the bottom 9 by 3 entire wins. But, I've got the Dogs beating North. I've got Collingwood beating Carlton. GWS battering West Coast. Gold Coast winning away and keeping their finals dreams, their first time playing finals, alive. Geelong will batter Richmond. Brisbane will get it done at the Gabba, but barely against Port Adelaide, but I'm not 100% confident on that game. Hawthorn will beat St Kilda. Fremantle go 7 in a row and really hunt top 4 and end Sydney's season hopes, because Sydney at this stage need to win all 8 games. You're going to need 14 wins 100%. If it's 9 wins already for top 8 with 8 games left, I don't see why it won't stretch out to 14. It's definitely looking likely, maybe even 15, which is scary. So Sydney would have to win every game. That's their finals dreams gone. And then Adelaide, they just continue pushing up higher for top 4 and putting that pressure on all of Fremantle, Hawthorn, Geelong and Brisbane, as they might even push for finishing top 2. Those are my tips, my 3 guarantees. I'm going to go Collingwood, I'm going to go Hawthorn, and I'm going to go Adelaide as my 3 guarantees for this round. Hopefully I can get 9 out of 9. Maybe even just 8 out of 9 would be lovely. Definitely should have got 7 out of 7, but those are my round 17 tips. Let me know what you think. And as always, up the Hawks.